I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to sit here and tell my story, but after everything that's happened, I feel like I need to get it out. Maybe it'll help someone else spot the warning signs or just make me feel less alone in this mess. Either way, here goes. So I met Lisa about 3 years ago. She's smart, funny, got this way of looking at you that makes you forget all your worries. We moved fast, got engaged last year, set a date for our wedding in a couple of months. I was finally happy. Or so I thought. We worked at different companies, but her job was pretty demanding, so I didn't see her much during the week. That's why I was excited about the company retreat last weekend. It was supposed to be fun, team building, some drinks, a little adventure. I even convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to unwind after a hectic few months. The retreat was in the mountains, a few hours away. The place was beautiful, a small lodge with a roaring fireplace and windows that looked out over snow-dusted pines. The air was crisp, really invigorating. I remember feeling lighter than I had in ages, thinking about how soon we'd be married, how everything was perfect. I didn't have a single inkling that anything was wrong, but then I saw her. It was late on the second night after we'd all had a few drinks and were sitting around the fire. I'd gone outside for a cigarette, the cold air burning my lungs. That's when I saw her with a guy I didn't recognize, her boss, Mark. They were close, way too close. She had her head leaned into his shoulder and they were whispering. His hand was resting on her knee. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I froze, clutching my cigarette tighter. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing, but my body was practically numb. The cold didn't help. I could see her smile, that familiar sparkle I'd fallen for, right there with him. It was so casual, like they known each other forever. Only I knew that Mark was married, that he had a wife and 2 kids. I also knew Lisa had no business being that close to anyone, especially not her boss. I stayed there in the shadows, watching. My pulse pounded. The air around me was suddenly thick and heavy, every breath a struggle. When they finally pulled apart, she looked around as if she sensed someone was watching. Her face stiffened for a moment before she straightened her posture and hurried inside. I stayed outside, chest tight, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. It was raw. I wanted to scream, punch something, run after her to demand an explanation, but I didn't. I just stood there, trembling as the cold seeped into my bones. I knew I'd seen something I couldn't ignore. It was betrayal, pure and simple. It wasn't just a flirt, not a one-night mistake. It was intentional, deliberate, a clear sign that I'd been blind. When I finally went back inside, I pretended I'd just been out for a walk. My mind kept circling, replaying everything I'd seen, trying to find some rational explanation. But all I could feel was this ache in my gut, the kind that sits deep and stays there. That's when I started noticing little things, her texts disappearing, her phone mysteriously always dead, her avoiding certain topics. I told myself I was paranoid. Maybe I was. I had no proof, just a gut feeling. Still, I couldn't shake that image, the way she looked at him. The way her body language changed when she thought no one was looking. The truth was right there, clear as day, even if I refused to admit it to myself. I didn't want it to be true. I wanted to believe I was overthinking, that maybe she was just friendly or it was nothing. But deep down, I knew better. Now I'm standing in this place of betrayal, trying to figure out what to do next. And believe me, that night haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, that casual, intimate closeness. It reminded me how fragile trust is, how easy it is to be deceived. I came here today because I need to ask, how do you even begin to trust again after something like this? Or do you? If you've ever been here, you know what I mean. That feeling that your world just cracked open and you're left to pick up the pieces. That's where I am. And honestly, I don't even know what my next step should be. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept turning over everything I'd seen. Her close, familiar whispering, her hand on his knee. I kept seeing her smile, that same smile she gave me when she was lying to me about where she was or who she was texting. It clung to me like a heavy weight I couldn't shake off. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and the taste of ash from my cigarette still on my tongue. My stomach was churning, a sick kind of knot that refused to untie. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see what I saw. The truth had already found a way inside my head, and I was damn sure I was going to face it. When I saw Lisa that morning, she looked like she'd slept poorly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she kept fidgeting with her coffee cup. I watched her for a moment, feeling my fists tighten. I wanted to shake her, ask her what she thought she was doing, but I kept my voice steady. "Lisa," I started, trying to keep the anger out of my voice, "we need to talk. Now." What? She looked up, her face flickering with that guilty, caught feeling. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice trembling just a little. I took a deep breath, then pulled out my phone and pressed play on the video I'd secretly recorded the night before. I kept the sound low, but the visuals spoke for themselves. Her hand on his knee, her leaning into him, clear as day. Her eyes widened and her face drained of color. "I saw this last night," I said, voice cold and sharp. "Tell me, Lisa, what's going on?" "Because this," I paused, gesturing to the phone, "doesn't look like innocent flirting. This looks like cheating. Why did you lie to me?" She stared at me, her lips trembling, fighting the tears. I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she whispered. "It was a mistake, just one moment of weakness, a mistake." I cut her off. "You call this a mistake?" Her hand on his knee, her whispering in his ear, "That's not a mistake, Lisa. That's betrayal. You're supposed to be getting married soon. How could you do this to me?" She looked down, silent. Long moment. I saw the tears pooling in her eyes, but I wasn't ready to comfort her, not yet. I felt like my chest was filled with cold lead, heavy and unyielding. "Did you even think about me when you were there?" I asked. "Or were you just using me as a backup plan until you found someone better?" Her shoulders shook as she fought the sobs. "It was a mistake," she repeated, voice cracking. I was stressed, confused. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please, can we just forget it?" "Forget it?" I almost laughed. That's what they all say. That's what I'd heard 100 times before, only now it felt like a punch to the gut. I could see her trying to minimize it, make it seem like nothing, but I knew better. Deep down, I knew this wasn't something I could just brush aside. I stood there watching her struggle, feeling my own rage simmer. I'd trusted her. I'd loved her. And now I was staring at this mess of lies and deceit. The taste of betrayal was bitter on my tongue. "I need to think," I finally said, voice hoarse. "Give me some space. I'll talk to you later." She nodded, eyes red and glassy, and I walked away, my mind swirling. I left her standing there, trembling, and I went outside to clear my head. I didn't bother to hide my anger or frustration. Every step I took away from her felt like stepping into a new, darker chapter of my life. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to shout, to scream, to demand answers. But I knew the truth was already out there. The trust I had in her was shattered. That's what's worse, knowing that what I thought was real, what I fought so hard to believe in, was just a lie. A very, very painful lie. I stood outside, staring at the snow falling softly around me, feeling the cold seep into my bones. That's when I realized I had to do something drastic. I couldn't just let this go. Not without consequences. Not without making her understand that betrayal like this doesn't come without a price. And I wasn't going to be the one to pay it quietly. Over the next few days, I couldn't keep my mind off it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, her face flushed, her smile genuine, her hand on his knee. It was like a wound that refused to heal. I kept going over everything I saw, every word I heard in my head. Honestly, I felt like I was walking around with a dark cloud hanging over me, dragging me down into a pit I couldn't claw my way out of. I tried to act normal, but it was impossible. My palms were always slick with sweat, like I'd just run a marathon. My stomach was in knots. I kept thinking about her, about what she'd done, and about how I'd trusted her. That trust had been the foundation of everything, and now it was shattered. I started planning. I can't say it was a clear, rational plan at first, more like a rush of anger mixed with a desperate need for some kind of justice. I needed to see her hurt, to make her feel what I was feeling. It wasn't about revenge just yet. It was about making her realize that betrayal has consequences. One thing I knew for sure, she hadn't been careful enough. She'd left clues, slips, signs I'd ignored. I began digging through her phone, every message, every email, anything I could find. I wanted to know just how deep this went. It was the only way I could figure out what I was dealing with. And then I found it. A message exchange. It wasn't just some harmless flirtation. It was more. They had plans, inside jokes, intimate comments that made my blood boil. Reading her words, I could almost feel her betraying me all over again. It was like a punch to the stomach every time I scrolled further into their conversation. I can't do this anymore, I muttered to myself. She needs to pay for this. That's when the idea started forming. I'd make her see what she lost, make her regret her choices. I wasn't about to let her walk away with just an apology. No, I wanted her to understand the depth of what she'd done. I wanted her to feel the same betrayal, the same pain that I had. I carefully mapped out my plan. First, I'd gather evidence, proof of everything. Then I'd confront her, but not just with words. I'd do something more strategic, something that would make her realize she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I knew her apartment well enough. I had access. She always left her phone on the nightstand charging. I made sure I was alone one night, slipped in and left a small note on her pillow. Something simple but pointed. I know everything. No signature, just that. The next morning she was frantic. She called me, pleaded, denied, but I wasn't buying it. I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. When she finally came home that afternoon, she looked like a trapped animal. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but I wasn't giving her one. I met her at the door, calm but deadly serious. "You lied to me," I said, voice low and steady. "You thought you could get away with it, but I know everything now. All those messages, you and Mark, right?" Her face drained of color. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, voice trembling. "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like," I said. "And I want you to understand something. You're not just cheating on me. You're betraying everything we stood for, our future, our trust, and I don't just walk away from betrayal, I fight back." Her eyes welled with tears. "Please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was stupid, I was confused. Just give me a chance to fix this." That's when I told her I wasn't interested in fixing anything. Not anymore, I was done. My stomach twisted as I watched her crumble, her face contorting in guilt and desperation. I knew I had to escalate. This wasn't just about words anymore. It was about making her realize that her actions had consequences. I needed her to remember this moment, the moment she lost everything because of her lies. That night, I set the final part of my plan in motion. I made sure she saw the evidence I'd collected, the messages and photos, the screenshots of her conversations with Mark. I wanted her to understand that I'd been watching, that I knew everything. And what happened next? Well, that's when the real game began. The next morning, I woke up with a decision made. I knew what I had to do, and I was ready to go through with it. The evidence I'd gathered was enough to make her realize she'd lost her grip on my trust, but I needed her to feel the weight of it. I wasn't just about exposing her. I wanted her to understand that betrayal like this comes with a price. I spent most of the day planning my move. I wanted her to see her actions for what they really were, not just in words but in undeniable proof. I knew her habits, her routines. I knew she'd be at her apartment that evening, so I prepared everything carefully. I wanted her to understand that I had been watching her, that I knew all along. Late that afternoon, I went to her place with a small bag. I didn't come with flowers or apologies. I came with resolve. I knocked on her door and waited. When she opened, her eyes immediately darted to my face, nervous and guilty. She knew I wasn't coming to smooth things over. "Hi," she whispered, voice shaky. "Hi," I echoed, stepping inside. "I've got something for you." I pulled out my phone, showing her the screenshots, her messages with Mark, the photos of her leaning into him at the retreat, the entire conversation that proved everything. She stared at the screen, her face pale. You found those?" "I did," I said, voice steady. "And I want you to look at this and tell me how you thought you could keep it hidden. How could you lie to me, cheat on me just days before our wedding?" She swallowed hard, then looked down. I could see her trembling, tears brimming in her eyes. She tried to speak, but no words came out at first. "You're right," she finally whispered. "I screwed up. I was stupid. I thought I could keep it quiet. I didn't think it would come out like this." "Oh, you didn't think," I said, voice rising just a little. "You gave me lies, made me trust you, and all the while you were with him. Did you think I wouldn't find out, that I'd never see the truth?" She looked at me, desperate. "Please, I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake. Save it," I cut her off. "You lied your way into this, and now you want to pretend none of it happened. I've had enough. You can't just apologize and move on. You crossed a line I can't ignore." Her sobs broke free then, loud and uncontrollable. She fell to her knees, clutching her face. "I love you," she choked out. Please don't do this. I'll do anything, just don't throw everything away. I stared at her, feeling a cold satisfaction mixed with a heavy sense of finality. This wasn't about petty revenge anymore. It was about her finally seeing the damage she'd caused. I'm done, I said quietly. You lied to me. You betrayed everything we had. I can't stay with someone I can't trust. I think it's best if we go our separate ways. Her cries grew louder, but I didn't care. I turned and walked out, leaving her there on her knees, tears streaming down her face. I knew I'd done what I needed to do. I wanted her to feel what it was like to lose someone she loved over her own stupid choices. That night I went home alone. I didn't sleep much, but I did feel a strange sense of relief. This chaos, this heartbreak, at least it was over. I finally had closure. I'd faced her, shown her the truth, and made her see what her actions had cost. Looking back, I realized that revenge isn't about hurting someone just for the sake of it. It's about standing up for yourself, making sure they understand the gravity of what they did. Trust me, nothing hits harder than knowing they finally get it, especially when it's too late. And that's where I am now. Moving on, trying to rebuild, but knowing I'll never forget what she did. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone in a similar situation, it's this. Don't ignore the signs. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Because once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to fix. After I walked out that door, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The house was quiet, too quiet. My mind kept replaying everything. Her crying, her begging, the look on her face when she realized I'd seen everything. But underneath all that, I knew I'd made the right choice. Staying would have meant sacrificing my self-respect, and I wasn't about to do that. In the days that followed, I threw myself into sorting out what was next. I deleted her number, her social media, everything that connected me to her. I wanted the pain to fade, but I also knew I couldn't fully move on until I understood why it had all happened. I kept asking myself, what was I missing? Where did I go wrong? But honestly, deep down, I knew the truth. She'd lied for months, maybe longer. Trust was gone. I started to reflect on how I could have missed the red flags. I remembered times she'd dodge my questions, her phone always dead, her sudden mood swings. I told myself I should have seen the signs, but I'd been too wrapped up in the future we'd planned. I was so eager, so hopeful that I ignored the little things that didn't add up. That was my mistake. Now I was left picking up the pieces. I also realized that revenge, in whatever form, isn't really about hurting her anymore. It's about reclaiming my dignity, about proving to myself that I deserve better. That I don't have to accept lies, betrayal, or a broken trust. I didn't want her to think she could do whatever she wanted without consequences, because she couldn't. One thing I did that helped was blocking her everywhere, social media, email, even her number. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I needed space to breathe, to heal. It was painful but necessary. I felt the ache in my chest lessen a little each day, replaced by a quiet resolve. I also made a decision. I was going to focus on myself. I started hitting the gym again, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and working on some personal projects I'd put off. I realized I'd been so focused on her, on the relationship, that I'd forgotten myself. Now I had to rebuild from the ground up. And then I got a strange message. It was from a mutual acquaintance, someone who knew about the situation but wasn't directly involved. They told me Lisa had moved out, was trying to fix herself, whatever that meant. Honestly, I didn't care much. All I knew was that I'd made my choice and I was sticking to it. But the biggest lesson I took away was this: trust is fragile, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. Don't ignore the signs. Those little gut feelings are there for a reason. If someone shows you who they are, believe them. Because when the truth finally comes out, it always hits hard. Now I'm not perfect. I still have days where I feel angry or stupid for believing in her. But I also feel relieved that I didn't stay in that toxic loop. I'm finally starting to breathe again, to look ahead. I know I'll be okay, even if it hurts right now. If I could give one last piece of advice to anyone reading this, it's this: never settle for lies and betrayal. Trust yourself enough to walk away. The pain will fade, and one day you'll look back and realize you dodged a bullet you didn't even see coming. Because real happiness starts when you stop accepting crumbs of betrayal and start demanding respect. And trust me, once you do that, everything changes. It's been a few weeks since I last saw her face, and honestly, I feel like I'm finally starting to breathe again. The pain still lingers, sure, but it's different now. It's not the sharp, stabbing kind. It's more like a dull ache that's slowly fading into memory. I've come to accept that she was never the person I thought she was, and that's a hard truth to swallow, but it's also a necessary one. I spent those first days after breaking things off feeling sick with regret and anger. Regret over trusting her, anger that I let myself believe in something that was never real. But gradually, I started to regain the clarity I'd lost. I realized that I'd been holding onto hope for a future that was built on lies. And once I saw that clearly, I knew I had to let it go. Now I'm focused on rebuilding myself. I handed over her keys and her belongings, finally cutting loose all the ties that kept me anchored to that betrayal. I spent a whole day gathering everything, photos, keepsakes, anything that reminded me of her, and I threw it all away. It felt like shedding a skin I'd been carrying for too long. That act was symbolic. I needed to remind myself that I control my future, not her lies or her mistakes. I also filed the official papers to end the engagement. It was a simple legal step, but it helped reinforce that this chapter was truly over. I looked right into the clerk's eyes when I signed the paperwork and told myself, "This is the end of it, you're free now." Since then, I've made a point to reconnect with myself. I've started going out more, spending time with friends, and even picking up hobbies I'd put aside. I realized I'd lost myself in trying to build a life with her, and now I'm working on finding who I really am. It's not easy, trust me. Breaking free from betrayal never is, but it's worth it. Every day, I remind myself that I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly cares. I've learned to listen to my gut, those little whispers that tell me when something feels off. I've also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her anymore. It's about making sure I don't get blinded by love or hope again. Looking back, I see a lot of red flags I ignored. Her avoidance when I asked questions, her secretive phone habits, her mood swings, things I brushed aside because I wanted to believe in us. But now I see that those signs were there for a reason. I just didn't want to see them at the time. What I want anyone reading this to take away is simple. Trust your instincts, pay attention to the little things, and don't stay silent when something feels wrong. If your partner is hiding things or lying to you, it's not just about the betrayal, it's about the respect you deserve. Walking away might be one of the hardest things you ever do, but it's also the bravest. I don't know what the future holds for me now. I can't say I'm completely healed, but I do know I won't let someone else's betrayal define me. I'll rebuild, I'll trust again, just not blindly. And I'll keep reminding myself that it's okay to put myself first. No one should settle for less. So here I am, finally free from her shadow. I'm beginning again, step by step. The pain will pass, and somewhere out there, I hope I'll find someone who values honesty and loyalty as much as I do. But for now, I'll keep moving forward because that's all I can do. And honestly, that's more than enough.